I wanted to answer your question about Michigan. Okay. So Joshua in the wiki, you familiar with him?
Yeah, of course.
He's the guy that takes the pictures.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a big section about that in the book here. He only does it in April and May.
Okay.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, I guess the weather's better. There's
Well, the weather's changing. Okay. So the water keeps the temperature for a longer period of time than the air does.
Okay.
Okay. So we're just coming out of winter.
Mm-hmm.
The water's cold. The air starts warming up.
Yes.
As soon as that air starts warming up, you're going to get light refraction.
Yeah. So you say it's just all refraction.
Well, that's
you think it's a mirage, though?
Do I think it's a mirage?
I mean, basically, wouldn't that be? We're not actually looking at it. We're looking
illusion,
at it.
whatever. The reason you're seeing Chicago skyline is because the light beam is being curved by the refraction due to the temperature difference between the water and the air.
Do you know about the Flying Dutchman?
No Dutch Bros coffee. I don't know the Flying.
Are you familiar with the Flying Dutchman?
Tobacco.
Is that a boat?
The ship that was so they would see ships flying above the water in the during the colonial period, and the legend emerged of the Flying Dutchman ghost ship.
Yeah,
it's just refraction of light made it appear that it was higher than it really was.
And sometimes they were upside down.
Yeah, but really what happens in those is actually the boat doesn't just get lifted because the water would have to get lifted too, right? Because there's light coming off the water. It's actually that there's like a reflective inferior situation that happens for Fata Morgana. It actually it reflects down, so it creates a mirror effect, so it makes it look like it's up in the sky, but it's actually not. I don't dispute optical effects. What I do dispute is just assuming that the sphere is a certain size, therefore it must bend this certain amount, because I went to that Chicago location, and there were wildfires in the west, coincidentally, so I couldn't see anything. Like you couldn't even see like a mile. But I talked to all the locals. They said you see it throughout the year. They said it's very frequent, certainly at sunset, that you see Chicago. So it isn't just those couple months or anything. It happens regularly. And then there is an observation that you can predict years in advance, every year, 2 days a year. I think it's in September and February. In Canigou, right, in France, you can see the Canigou Mountains from a distance that should be impossible just using geometry on a globe. And based on that time of year, the sun sets behind the mountains and creates a silhouette. And you can guarantee see those mountains line of sight directly in front of you on that specific day. You can book your flight right now, unless it's like crazy.
Yeah, but you know what?
He has to assume that there's no refraction for that.
The Flying Dutchman crew upgraded their ship to a cargo freighter.
If your theory was correct, you should be able to get something as powerful as the Hubble Space Telescope, point it toward California, and you should be able to see some structure in California.
No.
Why not?
I'll explain it. So like we'll actually use the Canigou explanation because it works perfectly. So before the sun goes behind Canigou, you can't see the mountains. You can't see them. You could only see the mountains once the sun gets behind it. Now, a lot of people would take that picture and say, see, this proves the globe. The mountains below the curve of the earth. But then the sun gets behind it, you can see the mountains. The reason you can't see the mountains at first is because of attenuation, right? Like the light gets absorbed by the medium and it can't make it to you. Once the sun gets behind it, now the intensity of light is so much greater, it can actually make it through the medium, right? So the rate of attenuation is not going to affect the image as much, and you're able to see it. Now, even in the globe paradigm, you would have to admit that. You would have to now say at just 150 miles, I can't see mountains that are in front of me because light gets attenuated and absorbed into the medium. So this idea that you can see,
I have no problem with that.
So you couldn't see across the world. The telescope doesn't actually fight attenuation, right? Like we can see stars because we're looking up through the thinnest part of the atmos. And even there, we actually have 1 to 2 degrees. We have almost a whole degree that we can't really know.
Well, what's the farthest you think the Hubble telescope can see through atmosphere of the Earth?
You mean like laterally, like horizontally? Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. It would few hundred miles, because we see a few hundred miles regularly. And Mount Wilson, if you got a higher elevation.
How could you prove a flat Earth then, if you can only see a couple hundred miles?
A few hundred. I mean, we have observations in planes with infrared where we've seen 5, 6.
Within that range of 200 miles, would Hubble be able to see a sublimation of the Chicago skyline?
It's all based on the attenuation of the atmos. It's always going to be based on the atmos. The light gets absorbed. The Canigou proves.
Okay, so your answer is how light's affected, right?
Yeah,
that's what my answer to him
but
was.
You're claiming it's bending at a certain rate. I'm just saying that light's attenuated.
Okay, so I'll say it's attenuated and it's bending.
But I can actually.
How does that prove a flat Earth?
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.